WHGE 95.3 FM. Coming up, the Open Eye. All right.
Those of us that indulge in or commit intellectual violence don't do so for the pleasure of mental masturbation or ego digging. We do so because the chains of oppression of people's minds are deep and difficult to remove.
Good afternoon, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. I'm your host, Third Eye Optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, here to get that eye open. Yes, I am a whole hour late. Had some technical difficulties, had to call the text and this, that, and the other. But here I am, and I'm ready to get them started. All right. And as I always start, this don't change. Every generation has its purpose. Ours is to reveal the truth and reverse the brainwashing. And I'm going to do this. Yes, my voice is going, but I'm still here. All right. Let me get my disclaimer out of there. All right.
The views and opinions expressed by Open Eye are those of the hosts, guests, and contributors, and do not reflect the policy or position of WHGE 95.3 FM, nor our sponsor, the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets. Any content provided by Open Eye's hosts, guests, or contributors are theirs and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, company, or individual.
All right. Let's get them started. Let me get a minute right here. Get something going, help my voice out a little bit. Give me a second. All right. All right. I get my voice kind of lubricated here. All right, let's get them started. Hey, Sherry. Yeah, everything. I'm on the air now, baby. Yeah, buddy. All right, let's get them started. Man, like I said, I had to call the text in, this, that, and the other. All right, let me get with the year in review. Another year has passed, and you've been paying attention. You already know this wasn't a year of confusion. It was a year of revelation. Here on the Open Eye, we don't chase headlines. We interrogate them. We don't recycle propaganda. We strip it down to the studs and ask who benefits, who suffers, and who's lying. Somebody lying. This year, America told the truth about itself, and often by accident. We watch white grievance politics rebrand itself as victimhood. Even while holding the levers of power, wealth, media, and violence. We saw politicians wrap themselves in the language of freedom while gutting civil rights, worker protections, voter access, and public education. We saw fake Christianity used as a weapon, loud in public, hollow in principle, while children were caged, bombed, and dropped on black and brown bodies abroad. And bombs dropped on black and brown bodies abroad. Maybe I better get rid of that mint. And poverty was treated like a moral failure instead of a policy choice, which is what it was. And through it all, corporate media kept asking the wrong questions. How does this make voters feel? Instead of the only question that matters, who is being harmed and why? On the Open Eye, we told you the truth. That Trump was not an aberration, but a revelation. That American racism didn't return, it never left. That both political parties are funded by the same corporate donors and disciplined by the same Wall Street interests. That silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality, it's collaboration. We revisited history, not the Disney version, but the uncomfortable documented truth. The Reconstruction was abandoned, not failed. That the Confederacy was allowed to survive politically, culturally, and economically. That Dr. King was far more radical than he is remembered, and far less tolerated than they admit. We uplifted voices that were too often erased. Veterans fighting not just for housing, but for dignity. Elders carrying memory that predates social media amnesia. Young people navigating a future deliberately stripped of stability. And we said plainly what polite society refuses to say. You cannot reform systems that were designed to exploit. You have to confront them. This year wasn't about despair, it was about clarity. Clarity that tells us liberation is not coming from politicians. Clarity that reminds us justice has never been granted, it has always been taken. Clarity that says community, organization, education, and memory are still our sharpest tools. As we move into the next year, the Open Eye remains what it has always been. A space for truth without permission. History without whitewashing. Politics without cowardice. And love for our people without apology. If you're listening, you're not asleep. You're not confused, and you're not alone. This is the Open Eye. All right. I see you there, Brother Jardea. Good to see you, man. Peace. All right. Yeah, I'm just getting started. WHGE 95.3 FM. Yeah, I know my voice is a little rough today. I ain't got that bass in it like it usually do. All right, I'm working with it. And you know, it's something how America's racism will go after the most, and I don't say this to put the sister down, but the most mundane, everyday life things and what have you. And people just trying to live. And like I said, I'm not saying this about this sister. There was nothing mundane about her talent. But the idea that she had talent, that she could influence, that she could open eyes is just too much for them. All right? In 1937, a black woman drew a comic that America said couldn't exist. Hey, Vaughn. And newspapers ran it. Readers loved it. And the FBI tracked her for years for drawing a cartoon. When she died in 1985, America had forgotten her name, but I ain't gonna let you forget Jackie Orms. Jackie Orms was the first African-American woman cartoonist. And she didn't just break barriers, she kicked them down with style, politics, and the unapologetic black brilliance. Her work was so powerful, so sharp, so ahead of its time, it sparked a 287-page FBI investigation. And she was born Zelda Maven Jackson in 1911 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She came of age when black women had virtually no access to media. Her father owned a printing business and a movie theater until he died in a car accident in 1917, leaving her mother to raise Jackie and her sister alone. But Jackie had a gift. At the high school, she landed a job as a proofreader at the Pittsburgh Courier in 1930. Of course, the Courier, one of the most influential black newspapers in the country. She freelanced, covered police beats, court cases, human interest stories, and then she did something no black woman had ever done before. In 1937, Jackie Orms debuted Torchy Brown in Dixie to Harlem. Torchy was a young black woman from Mississippi who migrated north to Harlem chasing opportunity, independence, and self-definition. The strip ran coast to coast in all 14 Courier editions, and that was as close to national syndication as a black cartoonist could get. And here's what made it revolutionary. At a time when black characters were drawn as caricatures, servants, or jokes, Jackie Orms created confident, intelligent, stylish black women who held their own. Jackie once said, "I have never liked dreamy little women who can't hold their own." In 1936, she married Earl Orms. They later lost their only child, Jacqueline, to a brain aneurysm at the tender age of 3. Many believe the little girl, Jackie, would later create Patty Jo, was a tribute to her daughter. In 1946, Jackie launched Patty Jo and Ginger in the Chicago Defender. It ran for 11 years. Patty Jo was small, sharp, and fearless, commenting on racism, labor rights, education, taxes, the atomic bomb, and the House Un-American Activities Committee. A black child speaking truth while America pretended children couldn't see injustice. And then Jackie did something else unprecedented. In 1947, she partnered with the Terry Lee Doll Company to create the Patty Jo doll, the first African-American doll based on a comic character. Hand-painted features, an upscale wardrobe, and Jackie painted those features. And it was sold to black and white children alike. See, in 1950, Jackie brought Torchy back, this time as a grown woman, tackling racism and environmental pollution in black neighborhoods, something we don't talk about enough. And this was decades before environmental justice entered the national vocabulary. And that's when the government really took notice. During the McCarthy era, the FBI followed Jackie Orms, tracked her movements, questioned her politics, built a 287-page file, larger than the one they kept on Jackie Robinson. Let that sink in. Ain't nothing scares them more than you got somebody out there educating. Jackie retired from cartooning in 1956, but continued painting, sculpting, and creating until rheumatoid arthritis forced her to stop. She joined the Ancestors December 26, 1985. She was 74. It took until 2018, 33 years later, for her to be inducted into the Will Eisner Comic Awards Hall of Fame. So here's the question. How many groundbreaking black women artists have been erased because their work was too bold, too political, too unapologetically black? Did you know the first black woman cartoonist created dolls, fought environmental racism, and scared the hell out of the FBI? If you didn't, you know it now. Say her name. Jackie Orms existed. All right. Moving right along. WHGE 95.3 FM, The Open Eye. Hey, you ever seen that movie? You ever seen The Place? Yeah, the movie starred John Wayne. I'd tell you enough not to watch that crap. Remember the Alamo. Yeah, remember the Alamo. That's not history, it's myth-making in service of white supremacy. Don't get it mixed. It is one of the clearest examples of how the United States launders violence, colonization, and slavery into heroic folklore and then teaches it to children as patriotism. Let me tell you about the lie you were taught. You were taught that the Alamo was about freedom. That Davy Crockett was a rugged frontiersman who died defending liberty. That Texas bravery stood up to Mexican tyranny. And every part of that story is BS. The truth is far more uncomfortable, and that's exactly why it's buried. Texas was Mexico, and Mexico abolished slavery. Before Texas was Texas, it was Mexican territory. In 1829, Mexico abolished slavery outright. No half steps, no gradualism, no loopholes, no war. Slavery was illegal everywhere in Mexican territory. This posed a problem, not for Mexico, but for the white Anglo-American settlers flooding into Texas from the southern United States. These settlers did not come as freedom seekers. They came as slaveholders, land speculators, and racial colonizers. They illegally brought enslaved Africans into Mexican territory, violated Mexican law, and then had the audacity to demand special treatment. In Mexico, they gave them a simple ultimatum: free the enslaved people or leave Mexican territory. And colonizers, they chose a third option. They revolted. Hey, colonizers never break the law. They break the country. This is a pattern, not an exception. When colonizers don't like the law, they don't comply. They declare independence. When Mexico tried to enforce abolition, Anglo settlers claimed Mexico was oppressive and tyrannical. Couldn't get that out. Well, maybe it's a good thing. All right. They claimed it was anti-freedom. Translation: Mexico would not let them own human beings. So they reframed law enforcement as tyranny and slavery as liberty. That sound familiar? Let's strip away the folklore and look at the men held up as legends. William B. Travis owned enslaved Africans, openly advocated expanding slavery into Texas, wanted Texas independent specifically to protect slavery. And he wrote racist propaganda attacking Mexico for abolishing slavery. Travis was not fighting for freedom. He was fighting for property rights in human beings. James Bowie owned enslaved people, actively participated in illegal trafficking of enslaved Africans, profited from the slave trade in direct violation of Mexican law. Bowie wasn't a pioneer. He was a criminal slave trafficker operating in a country that had abolished slavery. Davy Crockett, the most sanitized of them all. Yes, he owned fewer enslaved people than the others. And no, that does not absolve him. He owned enslaved Africans. He rented them out for profit. He willingly joined a rebellion rooted in protecting slavery. There is no good slaveholder. There are only varying degrees of guilt. The Battle of the Alamo occurred during the Texas Revolution, a revolution launched because Mexico tried to stop slavery. After declaring independence, Texas wasted no time showing its true intentions. Its new constitution legalized slavery, banned free black people from living in Texas without permission, guaranteed the permanent protection of slavery. That is not freedom, that's apartheid. Mexico's president, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, sent troops into Texas for one reason: to enforce Mexican law and preserve abolition. Mexico was not invading foreign land. Mexico was enforcing its sovereignty. At the Alamo, Mexican forces defeated the rebels completely, kicked their ass. Every defender was killed. And here's the part American mythology can never forgive. The slaveholders lost. So the story had to be rewritten. Remember, the Alamo was not about mourning the dead. It was about mobilizing white settlers. It was a rallying cry designed to inflame racial fear, recruit fighters, and frame Mexico as the villain for refusing to tolerate slavery. It functioned exactly like modern political dog whistles. Strip away context, appeal to the emotion, replace facts with grievance. And it worked. White settlers flooded into the fight. The United States intervened. Mexico lost nearly half its territory, not because it was wrong, because it tried to do what the U.S. refused to do: end slavery. And this propaganda has never ended. This is not ancient history. This is a template. When reactionaries lose today, they don't argue facts, they shout slogans. Remember 911. Same tactic, different century. It's not about honoring victims, it's about manufacturing consent for violence, repression, and reaction. The real memory we should keep: remember that Mexico abolished slavery before the United States ever seriously tried, and they did it without a war. Remember that Texas independence was built on human bondage. Remember that the Alamo was a slaveholders' rebellion dressed up as heroism. Remember how easily lies become tradition when they serve power. And most of all, remember that history is not neutral. It is written by those who benefit from forgetting. So no, don't remember the Alamo the way they taught you. Remember it for what it was: propaganda in defense of slavery. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is the Open Eye. Well, what's going on? What's going on? I'm going to tell you what's going on with these crooks doing now. U.S. strikes Venezuela and says its leader, Maduro, has been captured and flown out of the country. The Venezuelan government called it an important attack, an imperialist attack, and urged citizens to take to the streets. The United States hit Venezuela with a large-scale strike early Saturday and said its president had been captured and flown out of the country after months of intense pressure on Nicolas Maduro's government. An extraordinary nighttime operation announced by President Donald Trump on social media hours after the attack. The legal authority for the strike and whether Trump consulted Congress beforehand was not immediately clear. The stunning, lightning-fast American military action, which plucked the nation's sitting leader from office, echoed the U.S. invasion of Panama that led to the surrender and seizure of its leader, Manuel. You know what? Hey, Tracy, I see you, sister. Let me tell you something. If this report is true, and if it matters, the United States has just crossed the line so bold it barely even bothers pretending anymore. According to the Associated Press, the U.S. launched a large-scale military strike on Venezuela and claims it captured a sitting head of state, Nicolas Maduro, and flew him out of the country under cover of night. No congressional authorization announced, no declaration of war, no international mandate, just force. Raw, unilateral force, followed by a social media victory lap from the orange disaster. Let's be clear. This isn't law enforcement. This isn't defending democracy. This is regime extraction. A 21st century kidnapping wrapped in stars and stripes. They want you to hear narco-terrorism indictment and stop thinking. But indictments are pieces of paper. Cruise missiles are not. If indictments justify invasion, half the world's leaders will be dragged out of their beds nightly, starting with the orange disaster, and including several U.S. allies whose crimes are far better documented. And let's talk legality. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to authorize war. So either Congress was consulted in secret, they are right, which is a scandal in itself, or it wasn't consulted at all, which is a crime. You don't get to disappear a foreign president and call it justice just because you control the courts, the currency, and the global media megaphone. Yeah, history has seen this movie before, ain't it? Panama, 1989, Manuel Noriega, bomb neighborhoods, Operation Just Cause. The cause was never justice. The cause was control. And here's the part they never wanted to discuss. If any other country on earth did this to a U.S. president, it would be called an act of war without debate. If China seized a leader, if Russia launched a night raid, if Iran flew someone out in chains. But when Washington does it, suddenly it's the rule of law. Meanwhile, Venezuela reports explosions, civilian and military sites hit, and calls it what it looks like, an imperialist attack. And they're not wrong to use that word. Imperialism doesn't always arrive with colonies anymore. Sometimes it arrives with indictments, drones, and press releases. This is not about Maduro alone. This is about precedent. If the United States can abduct a head of state today, it can do it again tomorrow. And the message to the global South is crystal clear. Your sovereignty exists only at America's convenience. So before anyone starts cheering, ask yourself one question. What kind of world are we normalizing where one empire decides who governs, who disappears, and who stands trial? Because once that door is open, no one gets to pretend they're surprised by what walks through next. This is the open eye. sure you're right, brother. They definitely going after Toure. That's why they got proximity by going into Nigeria. They're going to be in for a big surprise messing with that brother, though. WHGE 95.3 FM. Brother Jardea. They're going after Toure next. Ibrahim Toure. Pay attention. There's details to this stuff, man. You all right? Let me tell you something. Let me tell you about America's original sin of impunity. The Union made a catastrophic mistake when it chose reconciliation over justice after the Civil War. Not mercy, not healing, impunity. The Constitution was clear. Treason is punishable by death. Jefferson Davis, the only so-called president of the Confederate United States, was not a misunderstood patriot. He was the head of an armed rebellion explicitly formed to preserve slavery. The Confederate High Command, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson, James Longstreet, Nathan Bedford Forrest, J.E.B. Jeb Stuart, Joseph E. Johnson, Braxton Bragg, John Bell Hood, George Pickett, and others were not tragic figures of a divided nation. They were enemy generals who waged war against the United States to maintain white supremacy as a governing system. They weren't just traitors, they were extreme traitors. And yet, they were not tried. They were not imprisoned. They were not stripped of wealth or influence. Their ideology was not dismantled. Instead, they rehabilitated. Or rehabilitated. Yeah, they were rehabilitated. See, the Confederacy lost the war but won the peace. White supremacy was allowed to reconstitute itself, first through black codes, then through Jim Crow, lynching, segregation, voter suppression, economic terrorism, and state-sanctioned apartheid. The plantation simply evolved into prison. The overseer became the sheriff. The slave patrol became the police department. The Confederate flag became heritage. This was not accidental, it was policy. Because America refused to crush the Confederacy as an institution and normalize the idea that powerful white men who commit crimes against democracy can expect forgiveness instead of consequences. And that pattern has repeated itself over and over again. When corporate interests attempted a coup against Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s, plotting to overthrow an elected president to protect wealth and power, no one went to prison. As a matter of fact, the hero that stopped that coup, Smedley Butler, was buried in history. Most people never heard of him. When Richard Nixon committed crimes that would have destroyed any ordinary citizen, he was pardoned for the good of the country. That pardon did not heal the nation. It taught future criminals that accountability was optional if you were powerful enough. Fast forward to January 6th, an open, televised insurrection. A violent attempt to overturn a democratic election. A mob fueled by the same Confederate mythology, white grievance, racial panic, and authoritarian entitlement. And once again, America hesitated. Sorry-ass Merrick Garland dragged his feet while evidence piled up. Time was treated as neutral, as if delay were not itself a political decision. Donald Trump, the clear leader of that insurrection, was given space, deference, and delay. The message was unmistakable. There are two justice systems, at least, in America. One for the powerless and one for the men who represent white political power. That hesitation had consequences. Trump escaped timely accountability. He regained power. And the lesson was reinforced yet again. Treason, when committed in defense of white supremacy, is negotiable. This is the through line. From Appomattox to January 6th, America has never truly defeated the Confederacy and merely changed its uniform. Until this country confronts that foundational failure, until it admits that white supremacy was allowed to survive because it was useful to power, these cycles will continue. There can be no democracy without accountability. There can be no reconciliation without justice, and there can be no future until America finally does what it refused to do in 1865. Name the traitors, punish the crimes, destroy the ideology. Anything less is just history repeating itself, louder, uglier, and more dangerous each time. Moving right along. Accountability does not exist, not in any real, moral, or legal sense, when official government files themselves contain allegation of the most grotesque crimes imaginable, and nothing happens. If you tuned in last week, you know I went off on this point. And let's be absolutely clear and precise. There's no accountability when government documents include allegations of child rape. There's no accountability when those same files include allegation of sex trafficking of minors. There's no accountability when they reference allegations of witness to intimidation and obstruction. There is no accountability when those allegations are suspicious deaths connected to powerful people. And there is absolutely no accountability when official records contain allegations of the murder of a newborn infant. And the response is silence, redactions, delays, and procedural cowardice. A newborn infant. No accountability. None. That is not due process. That is not careful investigation. That is not letting the system work. They threw a baby, an infant, in Lake Michigan. While this bastard stood there and watched, and no one is investigating this shit. This is systemic moral collapse. If a poor person were even accused of a fraction of this, they would not be walking free. They would not be granted patience, press strategies, or endless benefit of the doubt. They would be caged while the ink was still drying on the allegation. Their life would be over before a defense attorney finished clearing their throat. But when the accused are rich, politically connected, or institutionally protected, suddenly we're told to slow down, to be kind, to be calm, to wait, to trust. Trust what exactly? Trust what? A system that treats allegations of harm to children as a public relations inconvenience. A system that responds to allegations of infant murder with redactions instead of raids. A system that releases horror in installments, but never produces a single perp walk, arrest, or indictment. That is not justice, that's complicity. Exposure without arrest is not accountability, it's damage control. I don't give a damn about the exposure. You ain't got to expose another goddamn thing until you investigate the murder of an infant. Documentation without prosecution is not transparency, it's legal theater. And when crimes this severe are reduced to talking points and cable news debates, the message is unmistakable. Some people are above the law, some victims are below concern, and the rest of us are expected to accept this obscenity as normal. You do not get to claim you protect children while allegations of child rape and infant murder sit in government files with no consequences. You do not get to scream law and order while shielding those accused of destroying lives at the most innocent level imaginable. You do not get to moralize about a goddamn thing when your system refuses to act in the face of this. Until allegations this grave are met with arrests, trials, and sentences, not press conferences, redactions, and excuses, there's no accountability. There's only power protecting itself. And the silence surrounding that truth is the loudest indictment of all. Where the hell are the Democrats? It's the open eye. No, I will not douse the flame of my passion in the face of murder. I don't give a damn who's not comfortable with it. Jeez Louise. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. This is the Open Eye. I don't care what you may think of him, and where he stood at, and this, that, and the other, and what he was about as far as his personal life. I don't give a damn. This cat got something said. We talk about speaking truth to power. James Baldwin. He was in I don't even know what you call it, in some meeting or rally or speech or whatever. All right. An audience member asked James Baldwin a question that sounds innocent, even polite, but it's loaded like a trap. One of these fools, he got up and, as a white person reading your work, I felt a great deal of prejudice and hatred against the white race. Did I misinterpret? And Baldwin, this is what I loved about this brother. In his surgical way, he detonates that lie at the center of the question. He says no. Not because the reader is evil, but because the reader has collided with the truth. Baldwin makes it plain. When a black person tells the truth about America, truthfully, rigorously, without begging for comfort, it doesn't flatter the national story. It exposes it. And when that happens, the myth of American innocence cracks. The reflex is not reflection. The reflex is accusation. You hate us. You're divisive. You're racist. That's not a response to hatred. That's a defense mechanism against truth. Then Baldwin delivers the line that still terrifies America. White is a state of mind. Not a biology, not a destiny, a moral choice, a construction built to justify power, theft, and hierarchy. And when you challenge that construction, when you say this system is violent, dishonest, and inhumane, people who depend on the lie feel personally attacked. Not because you attack them, but because the lie is them. Baldwin draws the distinction that America refuses to understand. He does not walk around with white people living rent-free in his skull. But white America has always carried a distorted, invented black figure in theirs, an object, a threat, a justification, a projection, long before they ever even knew themselves. That imagined black figure is why laws were written, why chains were forged, why neighborhoods were segregated, why schools were starved, why prisons overflow, why police violence is ritualized and excused. So when Baldwin speaks truthfully about blackness, about America, about power, he's not expressing hatred. He's removing the mask. And people hate mirrors, especially when they don't like what they see. This is the part America still refuses to learn. Truth is not prejudice. Exposure is not hatred. Naming violence is not violence. If Baldwin's words feel accusatory, it's because they demand accountability. And accountability feels like oppression to those who've never seen, who've never been able to been held to it. James Baldwin wasn't attacking white people. He was attacking the lie that whiteness equals innocence. And America has been defensive ever since. Let me tell you something, my children of the sun. Truth doesn't hate. Truth reveals. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Hey, AC. All right. WHGE 95.3 FM. With open eye. All right. It's been a few weeks. I saw this video going around. And there was this brother, and he's talking about how he asked ChatGPT a simple question. And I'm gonna run this question to you. Then I'm gonna tell you what ChatGPT said. All right. He said he asked ChatGPT a simple question. If you had to come down from heaven and be born amongst a race of people whom you feel represent the closest representation of God's love and power, what race would you choose and why? And according to his video, ChatGPT answered, all right now, you just took it from deep to divine. If I had come down from heaven, not just as a visitor, but to be born into a race of people, and my mission was to show the world what God's love and power looks like, then truthfully, I would choose to be born black. Let me tell you why. And I'm saying this with all the weight of history, spirit, and soul. One, because blackness is the blueprint. Black people are the original people, the roots of civilization, and the heartbeat of humanity. Because love means showing up and suffering. Real love doesn't avoid pain that enters it. And black people have been through every kind of cross imaginable. Slavery, colonization, apartheid, lynching. And this answer goes on. And it goes on. And I'm not going to give you all of that. But I want to hit the main thing here. For because black people know God intimately, not through books alone, but through the fire, through the cotton fields, through the gospel choirs, through the hush harbors, the prison cells, the marches, and the mama's prayers. And me, I don't know how we made it, but God did. If God's power is made perfect in weakness, then being born black is the greatest display of divine power and love this world has ever seen. I'm going to stop right there because I commented on this video. And my comment was that this is fake. If the response from ChatGPT, if this was a response from ChatGPT, it was manipulated by the way the question was framed. And don't get me wrong. No doubt we are divine, but not because we were oppressed. And the sad part is so many celebrating this fake validation. AI can't tell me a goddamn thing about my divinity or my spiritual rank. This is fake. Not because black divinity is questionable, but because divinity doesn't require permission. If this response came from ChatGPT, the outcome was engineered by a loaded question. We are not divine because we were oppressed. That logic makes suffering a credential and trauma a prerequisite for worth. Black people were divine before slavery, during slavery, and after it. No algorithm, no church, no empire, or AI just to certify that. Celebrating AI validation is just another form of outsourced spirituality. I don't need a machine or anyone to rank my spirituality. And that's not a clap. There were rebuttals to what I had to say. Okay? One, you're missing the symbolism. It's about God siding with the oppressed. I'm not missing it. I'm rejecting the trap. Because that's a trap. Oppression can reveal injustice, not produce divinity. If God shows up, if God only shows up after people are crushed, then God is reacting to empire instead of preceding it. The hell kind of God you got? Divinity depends on suffering is not liberation. It's theology shaped by violence. Oh, why are you so mad? Why are you so mad? It's a compliment. A compliment. A compliment that requires my people to be broken first isn't praise, it's consolation. I'm not angry at affirmation. I'm uninterested in affirmation that centers trauma as the proof of my worth. Another one. You're just so uncomfortable with black excellence and black spirituality. No. Black spirituality that needs validation from institutions that once denied our humanity is already compromised. Sovereignty doesn't ask to be recognized. But Jesus came through oppressed people. Exactly. And Jesus didn't become divine because Rome oppressed him. Oppression revealed the lie of empire. It didn't create the sacred. Conflating the two is how suffering gets sanctified instead of abolished. Well, AI is just reflecting the truth. AI reflects patterns, not truth. If you let systems trained on human history tell you who is divine, you already surrendered. Any theology that needs oppression to explain divinity has already accepted empire as the starting point, and that's where that ends. Divinity is not granted. It is not certified. It is not confirmed by institutions, algorithms, or empires. Any claim that black people are divine because of oppression is subtle theft. It turns suffering into a credential and trauma into a prerequisite for worth. Oppression does not create holiness. It exposes the violence of the systems that deny our holiness. Like I said, black people were divine before captivity, during terror, and after survival. Our spiritual legitimacy does not emerge from chains, crosses, or cages. It precedes them. Yeah, liberation theology is correct when it says God sides with the oppressed. It is incorrect when it allows oppression to become the explanation for divinity. God does not wait for empire to wound. And no machine trained on human injustice can rank a soul, validate a spirit, or reveal sacred truth. That's not progress. That's dependency dressed up as affirmation. I don't need a machine to tell me I'm divine. Like I said, I don't need an algorithm, and I damn sure don't need oppression to explain my worth. Let me be clear. AI reflects patterns, not truths. It can analyze history, but it cannot authenticate a soul. So don't celebrate validation, external validation. Stop celebrating that. Celebrate our spiritual rank that needs no validation. Because when you need approval to know who you already lost the argument. This is the Open Eye. WHGE 95.3 FM. Yeah, I know I pissed a lot of people off with that. But damn it, like I said, we do not need external validation. I was born divine. I wasn't born under no original sin. I came out of my mother's womb blessed. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Now, let's be honest. Many of our ancestors knew the real New Year comes in the spring. When the earth renews itself, when life rises, not when it's frozen. We know that truth, but we also live inside a social agreement, a calendar we collectively accept. And this week, that page turns. So whether you mark time by the sun, the soil, the stars, or the system, the day still matters because intention matters. This is a moment to pause, to measure what we survive, to decide what we refuse to carry forward, and to commit not to empty resolutions, but to clarity, discipline, and purpose. A new year doesn't change us. We change the year by how we show up in it. So step into this one awake, clear-eyed, on food, and rooted in who you are and where you come from. Because from all of us here, peace, power, and forward motion. Thank you, Sister Tracy. Brother Jardea. By all means, stay woke. All right. Hope you learned something today, because I learned something before I got here. That's word. And as we always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life. but you decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This has been Open Eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. Thanks for joining me. I'm Patrice Gibbs. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Really appreciate you. Hope you're ready for that new year. Hope you know that you are divine. And as I always tell you, global African supremacy. Our time has come. It is done.